What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of UFC action, and we have UFC Vegas 75 on deck this Saturday, featuring a potential 5-round middleweight main event between former title challengers Marvin Vettori versus Jared Cannonier. It's a very compelling matchup in the main event. 5 rounds of action. Both guys have power in their hands. Both guys are pretty durable, and both guys are trying to cement themselves as the next in line for a rematch at 185. So can't wait for that one. Pretty high level stuff. And we also have a pretty high level card in total. 14 fights on the card, surging prospects, returning veterans, and just really fun matchups that I like from a betting perspective. Money lines, overs, unders, and some props I'm looking to add as well. So I'll go over all of that. I'll try to keep it concise since there are so many fights, and you can join me back here on Tuesday night, one day early this week, Tuesday night for my live stream at 8 p.m. Central Time, featuring my guy Aaron the Dog. First time on this channel, but I do like his show. He's got his own YouTube channel where he does UFC betting content and regional MMA as well. He's a pretty sharp guy, and I can't wait to break down this card with him. It's a very good one. So I did go just over 2 units lost on that last pay-per-view up in Canada, where Team Canada just went wild. A lot of results I did not predict correctly on that card. Luckily, the betting was mitigated. It wasn't a total, huge loss, just over 2 units lost, but still didn't feel too good. So I want to get that back this week with some big profit, and I'll be going over all of the bets I currently have and the ones I'm looking to place. So again, hit the like, hit the subscribe, comment down below some of your predictions for this card, and let's keep the channel growing, and make sure you check out the description if you need a new sports betting partner. My partner is Bet Online. They are a partner of this channel, and you can directly help out the channel and get a 50% welcome bonus by using that link to Bet Online in the description. So without further ado, let's break into the first fight of the prelims. First fight of the night is at light heavyweight between Modestas Bukauskas and Zach Pauga. This is actually the heaviest fight of the entire night, but 205ers here. We've got Modestas, who is really a true 205er at 6'3" with a very long reach. Only 29 years old, and this guy was, I believe, the Cage Warriors champion before the UFC. He went 1-3 in the league, was exiled back to Cage Warriors, where he scored 2 back-to-back wins, the latter one being the championship win in round 4, a very nice rear cross to get the knockout. He returns earlier this year against Tyson Pedro as an underdog and comes through and gets the job done by decision after Pedro had gassed out after round 1. So he's a very technical counter striker, a little bit low volume, but he does have long striking weapons. He feints well. He throws very crisp, long, straight punches. And his anti-wrestling is decent, at least, against somebody at the level of Zach Pauga. And Zach Pauga used his wrestling in his last fight against Jordan Wright. So back at 205, the natural weight class of Zach Pauga. His only loss in the UFC was his debut against Mo Usman on the Ultimate Fighter finale at heavyweight. So he got knocked out badly in round 2. Came back about, 6 months later, earlier this year against Jordan Wright, which really for anybody should be, if you're worth anything in the UFC, you should be able to beat Jordan Wright and do it inside the distance. Zach Pauga actually took Jordan Wright to not only his first third round, his first over 2.5, and Jordan Wright's first decision ever. A clear win for Pauga, but he spent all of rounds 1 and rounds 2 just holding Jordan Wright against the cage in the clinch, and then basically went strike for strike against the diminished version of him in round 3 to get the W. So not a very dangerous guy as Zach Pauga at the weight class. He's 6-1, 5 decisions, 1 knockout. I believe it was like a ground and pound stoppage earlier in the regionals. And Zach Pauga, even at 6'2" and a decently long reach, the guy does physically look like he could drop another 20 pounds if he really cut the weight and went to 185. But he is 35 years old in his blossoming UFC career right now, so I don't see any big changes or improvements being made to his game. So Bukauskas is going to be the far better technical striker here. He feints well. He throws nice kicks and a good diverse striking attack. Pauga is a guy who relies on his wrestling, and I just don't think he's going to get that done against Bukauskas. So give me Bukauskas to be the younger, faster, bigger, longer, more dangerous striker here. And I do think he probably wins this fight by decision, but a knockout wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. I could see Pauga, winning this if he could really cage stall, but Bukauskas is pretty strong in the clinch, much stronger than Jordan Wright. So give me Bukauskas. It's about -180 on the money line for Bukauskas. it's hard to pay that price. Like, the money line makes sense to me. I think it should be about there, but not a lot of extra value on him, and not somebody you really want to trust until you see him make a big statement against somebody at the level of Zach Pauga. Bantamweight bout up next between Ronnie Lawrence and Daniel Argueta. This is a battle between two wrestlers in the 135 division. We've got Ronnie Lawrence, who is currently 2-1 in the UFC. Also had that one win on the Contender Series over Jose Johnson. So Ronnie Lawrence, he's more of an MMA wrestler, very effective, and he's got good striking and weaponized cardio, averaging an obnoxious 7 takedowns per 15 minutes over the 4 fights I mentioned. So pretty impressive stuff there. He did get his win streak snapped at the hands of Saidukop Kakramanov a year ago, who flipped the script on Ronnie Lawrence and actually had his moments on the feet, capitalized on the takedowns, and was able to break Ronnie Lawrence as the fight went on with a massive amount of control time in that fight. So Ronnie Lawrence, I do think that was a spot where there's just levels to the game at that point. Kakramanov is super athletic, and he should still be in the UFC. I'm not sure why he's not, but I'll forgive that one against Ronnie Lawrence. Against Daniel Argueta, Argueta is 1-1 in the UFC so far. He had that short notice up a weight class at featherweight debut against Damon Jackson as a massive underdog, and he lost appropriately, but he was controlled for about 10 minutes at the hands of Damon Jackson, but didn't get submitted in that fight. So coming back against a debuting fighter against him next time, that was Nick Aguirre, and Daniel Argueta did the same thing that Damon Jackson had done to him. 10 minutes of control time and just a dominant performance there. So Daniel Argueta, compared to Ronnie Lawrence, his wrestling is probably more textbook. It is like a D2 collegiate background type of wrestling, but as far as his mixed martial arts skills go, it's less fluid, and you can tell when you look at the guy, he's a stocky, muscular, collegiate wrestler, and his striking is not that fluid. It's a work in progress. Doesn't hit the target with straight, clean punches. Ronnie Lawrence, I think, will have the more effective wrestling here just because his striking is so much better, and he's used to blending those skills in the cage. So I think that's going to help hide the level change, and I think that's going to really make the wrestling look more dominant for Lawrence. His cardio also, I think, will hold up better, which will then in turn lead to better wrestling outcomes in this fight. And the BJJ, you got to give it to Argueta. He's got a slick back take, a tight squeeze, and a good choke with 4 submissions out of his 9 wins so far as a pro. Neither guy has been knocked out or submitted. I think this does, for the most part, go to the scorecards at 135. And I think Ronnie Lawrence gets his hand raised here. So I'm going to side on the experience, the cardio, and the striking advantages here. And take Ronnie Lawrence at what I think might be a bit of a discount here since he lost his last fight dominantly. We're getting Ronnie Lawrence around minus 155 is where I got him on the money line. I bet him at that price. He's around minus 170 to minus 180 now. I still don't mind it, and maybe you could soften that by looking at him by decision or looking at the overs in this fight. So we're looking at the overs sitting around. Let me look for it here. Okay, I mean they're pricing that pretty high. Over 2.5 in this fight is minus 235. That's a bit rich. So I would just pick your side. I think it is Ronnie Lawrence. I think it is by decision. Women's flyweight bout up next between Teresa Bleda and Gabriela Fernandes. Both women making their second walk to the UFC cage, looking to get their first win after dropping both of their debuts. For Teresa Bleda, who is the grappler in this matchup, she's only 21 years old, and she made her debut last November at age 20, taking on Natalia Silva, which is a very, very tough test in your debut. We know now just how amazing Natalia Silva is as a prospect, how well-rounded she is. And Teresa Bleda was able to ground her in the early part of the fight, but I think she got reversed in a couple of spots there, and at that point you kind of knew that this was not going to go her way. She got outstruck on the feet, and then finally in round 3 when she slowed down, she got spinning back kicked to a knockout loss in round 3. So that was her first professional loss. I think her first loss ever. Bleda does have a 6-0 amateur record. She has a few exhibition fights, and she does have the 6-1 now, her professional record, where she's gone 2 knockouts, 2 subs, and 2 decisions. But she really wants to get the fight to the mat with her strong wrestling, takedowns from various angles, and then she looks for the ground and pound and eventually the submission if she can find it. So not bad, not the worst cardio in the world. If she's forced to, rinse and repeat takedowns, she can start slowing down. But overall, her striking is a little erratic on the feet. She does have a long jab, but she's there to be hit in return. And if she's forced to stand with Gabriela Fernandes for extended periods of time, she will lose that fight and possibly get finished. Fernandes is 29 years old, the former LFA flyweight champion, super powerful. She's got a couple of knockouts on her record, a few submissions as well, some of them set up by those strikes. And her kicks are clean, powerful. Her boxing is clean and powerful, very technical and long. But Fernandes has that glaring weakness, which is her takedown defense, not very good, and her get-up game, not very good. So having her debut against Jasmine Jasudavicius, again, another tough test, as we're seeing. Jasmine is kind of bet a dog as far as the toughness goes. She ate a lot of Fernandez' strikes, kept moving forward, and got those takedowns, racking up like 11 minutes of control time. So Fernandes probably going to get taken down in this match, possibly get submitted, and I don't think she can get back up off of her feet. But Teresa Bleda is a minus 250 to minus 275 favorite. I think that's far too wide, even though she does have probably the clearest path to victory here, dictating where the fight plays out. It's just a lot could go wrong, right? Bleda is still unproven, still young. If she's got a bad night and gasses out early, you could have rounds 2 and rounds 3 going all the striking for Fernandes, who could get a finish in those rounds. But Teresa Bleda, I think, will get those takedowns. She will control how this fight plays out. I think she will break down Gabriela Fernandes and, kind of zap her will to get back up to her feet. So give me Bleda by either a submission early or a decision if this gets drug out late. But, I wouldn't be surprised if you get some big fat numbers on Fernandes, like a round 2, round 3 knockout, which that could play into this scenario I'm talking about that could happen. Bleda wearing out, slowing down, and getting knocked out on the feet again like she did last time. So I might play those, if anything, just small sprinkles on that Fernandes finish in round 2, round 3. But overall, I think Bleda does get the job done. I just think that money line is far too steep. So give me Teresa Bleda. I'll call it by decision. Flyweight bout up next between Zalga Zhumagulov and the debuting Felipe Bunes, a Brazilian submission fighter. At 125, we've got Bunes, who is the plus 125 underdog. Zalga Zhumagulov, the 6-fight UFC veteran, is minus 150. And in those 6 UFC fights, he has gone 1-5 in his record so far. A lot of fights that could have gone his way. This is the story of the bad luck of the Zhumagulov judging decision so far. And he's coming out with a vengeance in this fight. He was really fired up against his last opponent, Rafael Estevam, who he did not get a chance to fight since the fight fizzled out. But the fight against Charles Johnson last year, super close, could have gone his way. I think about a year and a half ago or so against Jeff Molina, that fight probably should have gone his way for sure. And even going back to Raulian Paiva, that fight probably could have gone his way as well. So Zalga Zhumagulov, he's had some bad breaks, but sometimes it is self-induced. He's got kind of a shorter stature, even for 125. And when he does his blitzing attacks with the striking to get in range, sometimes before he can exit range, he gets hit back and countered with just as many strikes as he landed on his opponent to get in range. So stuff like that. He usually fights to the striking metrics of his opponent. If you throw 45 strikes, Zalgas will throw like 46. Or if you're in the case of Charles Johnson, if you throw triple digits, Zalgas went right back in there with him and answered with triple digits and still lost the fight. But Zhumagulov has got pretty good grappling. When he pushes the issue, he can take down pretty much anybody he puts his mind to. And on the flip side, he's only been taken down by one man, and that was Amir Albazi. So pretty fast guy, still 34 years old and not really regressing that much in my opinion. Felipe Bunes, a guy who's got 13 wins and 6 losses on the regionals. I mentioned, or maybe I didn't, high-level competition, Patricky Pitbull and Patricio, guys in Brazil he's trained with. And also, he just finished up his camp here in the States at Fight Ready. So, like I said, against a guy who's probably the most talented wrestler he's fought so far in Zalgas, that should come in handy. And anytime Felipe Bunes does go up in competition, he tends to lose the fight. He fought Jussier Formiga, former UFC fighter, and lost by submission. When he went over to the ACA overseas, any of those Russians with a pretty decent record, he's losing the bout to. And he's pretty eager to play jiu-jitsu off of his back, since he does have 8 submissions, and that's usually how he ends the fight. But he can get controlled there. He can get ground and pounded there. And I don't think his cardio and I don't think his speed, striking, and especially the wrestling, is anywhere near that of Zalga Zhumagulov. Now Zhumagulov could let this slip between his fingers. We'll see, but I do think he is fired up and he's going to be aggressive to make a difference and separate himself from the newcomer in this bout. So give me Zhumagulov to win the fight. I think he does it by decision, which is a scary proposition, but I think it's going to be decisive enough to get the judges' nod here. Felipe Bunes is more of a finisher. He's 2-4 in decisions himself, so not a great record there with the judges on the Bunes side. And furthermore, I'd probably take Bunes if this was like a mid-20s flyweight coming into the UFC. Bunes is 33 years old, so what we're seeing right now, in my eyes, looks like an improving fighter that could be better fight to fight. We're seeing probably one of the finished versions of him at flyweight at 33 years old. So give me Zhumagulov at -150. I took him on the money line, and I think he gets the job done here. Currently sitting around -160 to -170. I don't hate that either. It's starting to get a little dicey at that number, but I think Zhalgas rights one of the wrongs in his career with the decision victory on Saturday. Another flyweight bout up next between Carlos Hernandez and Dennis Bondar. And I've been waiting to see Dennis Bondar back in the UFC for a while. We got teased with a very quick debut in a TKO loss as a big favorite against Malcolm Gordon about a year and a half ago. Dennis Bondar came off the European regional scene. He's a Ukrainian submission fighter and boasted a 100% finish rate, 16 wins, 16 fights won inside the distance. And against Malcolm Gordon, it seemed like a pretty tailor-made matchup for another highlight reel finish. But he got outstruck by Malcolm Gordon quickly in the early going, shot a takedown, got wrapped up in one of Malcolm Gordon's, I think it was a triangle or something like that. And while trying to get out of it and post up, Bondar dislocated his elbow. It folded the opposite direction. He got TKO'd in round 1. So now a year and a half later, he's taking on Carlos Hernandez, who represents a sort of a well-rounded fighter, a guy with decent striking weapons, some durability shown so far, and a guy who's got a slick back take and submission game himself with a few rear naked chokes on his record. But Hernandez, not overall the most high output striker. He is a bit low output, hesitant to throw, as a flyweight is never very good. And the guy has lacking takedown defense so far. So Hernandez himself had a close fight on the Contender Series. He had a very close split decision win, which probably could have been a loss against Victor Altamirano in his debut. And now he followed that up with another loss, a round 1 submission loss to Alan Nascimento. So things aren't looking great for Hernandez, but he was still opened up as the favorite and stayed there for quite a while over Dennis Bondar. So I took Bondar at +102, just put 1 unit on him. There's still a lot to learn about Dennis Bondar, who's currently now like a -125 favorite. But yeah, his body lock takedowns are great. His takedowns out in space or against the cage are pretty good. And Bondar is very dangerous when he's up close. If he can close that distance, his striking at range is pretty erratic and pretty, it's kind of like throwing haymakers, looking for the knockout punch, big overhands. It can be a bit sloppy and leave himself open to be countered. But up close, good explosive knees, good elbows up close, and he gets the fight to the mat. He'll just blast you with ground and pound, look for the submission, which he's pretty fast at wrapping up. So 11 subs on his record. I think he gets a 12th one against Carlos Hernandez. Give me Dennis Bondar to get the round 1 or round 2 submission here. Bantamweight bout up next between Kyung-Ho Kang and Christian Quinones. It's a very fun fight to analyze, honestly, because both guys have some solid strengths that they bring to the cage. For Kyung-Ho Kang, the Korean fighter who's been in the league for 11 fights now in the UFC, he's got a lot of experience. He's seen a lot of different types of opponents, and he's got a very good submission wrestling-based game, scoring 11 subs out of his 18 wins as a pro. He is 35 years old at bantamweight, probably pushing the limit, but he does not look like he's slowing down, coming off of a dominant decision win, or at least decisive one, against Danabat Gurel, which is solely a striking battle. So I talk about the submission grappling ability of Kyung-Ho Kang. We have not seen that in a few years because he had that striking match against Danabat Gurel, and he had a fight against Ronnie Yaya before that, where he was the one getting dominated in the grappling and ultimately lost that fight. But Kyung-Ho Kang, not the most dangerous striker, but his striking weapons clearly are pretty polished. He can really snipe you with that jab and just keep you on your back foot, just trying to get past that weapon. But he's very durable too. The last time he's been finished by strikes was like 2008, I want to say. So hardly ever happens for Kyung-Ho Kang. And Christian Quinones might actually test that because he's a very good striker. He's the younger brother of former UFC fighter Jose Quinones, a guy who represents Entram Gym, pretty high-level training experience there. And he's been in promotions like Brave CF, Combate, and the UWC, where he's actually gone 5 rounds before and showed pretty good cardio. And his takedown defense is still a work in progress, but it's getting better fight to fight. We saw that on display in the Dana White Contender Series, and we saw his striking power on display in his debut against Khalid Taha, a round 1 knockout last September. So he's a pretty good finisher. Out of 18 wins, Quinones has got 10 knockouts and 3 submissions, and he's also 5-0 in decisions. So I do like his minute-winning ability here. We saw a pretty high-output striking battle between Kyung-Ho Kang and Dana Bakura last time, but that's pretty atypical. Usually Kyung-Ho Kang is pretty low output with the striking and more going for the takedown threat and the grappling. And he's been in a lot of close fights, fighting to the level of his competition, actually being in 5 split decisions out of his 8 UFC decision results. So that's actually pretty substantial. And this guy rarely ever fights in the U.S. This is one of his few fights in Las Vegas. He's a guy who historically fights on those overseas cards in Asia or Europe. So we'll see how he performs in the Apex. It's been a while. And I think Quinones will win the minutes here as the younger man by 8 years, the more aggressive striker. He doubles and triples up that jab pretty well, just like Kyung-Ho Kang does. He also throws damaging leg kicks like Kyung-Ho Kang does as well. So I think we see Quinones be a more improved, younger version, and he gets the job done by most likely decision. I could see this going over since both guys are proven to be pretty durable. But where the money line is at right now, we're looking at Christian Quinones, the minus 175 favorite, about plus 150 for Kyung-Ho Kang. That's about where I would price this. I don't see a lot of extra value on Quinones. Kyung-Ho Kang could certainly pull something off here. He is the older man, but like I said, I don't see him regressing that much. But I think Quinones will just be more aggressive and busier. So give me Quinones to pull off that decision win. Flyweight bout up next between 2 submission grapplers. We've got Jimmy Flick taking on Alessandro Costa. And Jimmy Flick is making his 3rd walk to the UFC cage, which is wild because we've been hearing the name Jimmy Flick for years. But he did have that kind of premature retirement in 2020, and then he came back earlier this year in 2023. Returned to take on Charles Johnson and got pieced up for 3 minutes on the feet and ground and pounded at the end of round 1. So not a good look from the BJJ specialist in Jimmy Flick. And he is a true specialist because he goes for broke for the submission, and if he doesn't get it, he's going to gas out at least in round 2 or round 3 and probably get finished. He has 16 wins as a pro, 6 losses. 14 submissions make up those 16 wins. He's never gotten a knockout or finished by strikes. It's only by submission. And out of his 6 losses, 5 he's lost by knockout or TKO. So a lot of those are largely because, he's not that durable, and also his gas tank does fail him. He's a very powerful guy, and that power, instead of manifesting itself in the striking, it manifests itself in the submission game. We saw the flying triangle against Cody Durden in his debut a few years ago. Things like that are super powerful and expend a lot of energy. He does have good wrestling early, tries to rip his opponents to the mat, even sometimes pulling them on top of himself just so he can work out of his dangerous guard. But by round 2, round 3 at least, that's done. His gas tank is empty. He's hittable and pretty much primed to get finished. So a guy like Alessandro Costa, who's got 6 submissions out of his 12 wins, he also balances that with Costa's very powerful striking game. He's got very slick counters. He's aggressive. He's scored a 12-second jab cross left hook knockout. Knocked the guy out cold in one of his previous fights before the fight against Amir Albazi in his debut, which is the first time he got knocked out in a while. So, you got to forgive the Albazi fight. It was on short notice, and it is against one of the best guys in the division. So, no harm, no foul there. Costa is 27 years old and still improving, in my opinion. He's got 5 arm bars out of his submission wins, so probably not going to be pulling off an arm bar against Jimmy Flick unless, Jimmy Flick is just dog tired and we get some sort of fluffy Hernandez versus Adolfo Vieira finish. But I could definitely see Costa knocking out Jimmy Flick in round 1, certainly in round 2 or round 3, more likely. So I'm going to call just that. I think it's going to be a knockout against Jimmy Flick early round 2. And Costa's a minus 250 favorite over the plus 210 Jimmy Flick. the number makes sense to me. There's so many advantages in the wrestling, the striking, the cardio and toughness as this fight goes on. I think it's round 1 or at least under 1.5 submission for Jimmy Flick or bust. So if you want to play Jimmy Flick, I would just play him by submission since he rarely wins decisions anyways. But I like Costa by knockout, and currently you can get Costa into the distance at -130 on BetOnline. So that's the route I'm going to go with it. Give me Costa, round 2 knockout. Bantamweight bout up next between Raoni Barcelos and Miles Johns. Always a treat to watch the Brazilian Raoni Barcelos compete because this guy is really so well-rounded and talented. If you wanted to make your own mixed martial artist from scratch and give them, all the advantages, just look at the credentials of Raoni Barcelos. You'd give the guy, super high-level BJJ. You'd give him good wrestling to take the fight to the mat and use those submissions. And you'd give him very good striking for when it stays on the feet. And that's what Raoni Barcelos has. His striking is super comprehensive, very good feints and pull counters, good kicking weapons, and good power with 8 knockouts out of his 17 wins. But there's always a trade-off, and the trade-off for Raoni is that he's 36 years old at bantamweight. Certainly has a lot of fight miles and, more towards the end of his career. He's currently losing 3 out of his last 4 fights, coming off of a brutal knockout loss in round 1 at the hands of Umar Nurmagomedov. So there are some problems with Raoni Barcelos for as well-rounded and credentialed as he is. Now, Miles Johns, powerful striker, solid wrestling background, but you don't really see him using that wrestling so much these days. He is mostly just like a slick boxer on the feet. With good power in his hands, he can get in range pretty well. At 29 years old, there's still some time left for him to make his mark on the division. But he can be super low output, looking for the big counter, looking for the big moment. And coming off of that fight with Vince Morales last time out, where he won the decision pretty clearly, but it was super low output. I mean, he scored just 38 significant strikes over Vince Morales, who actually scored 39 himself, but it was the bigger, more damaging head strikes for Miles Johns. It was Miles Johns pushing the action in the clinch and with the takedowns in some spots. So pretty poor performance in my opinion. And against Raoni Barcelos, I think even a diminished, regressed 36-year-old Raoni Barcelos is better than Miles Johns pretty much everywhere. Unless Barcelos somehow gasses himself out very early on and Miles Johns can take over. That is another plus to Miles Johns. He does come alive towards round 2 and round 3, scoring a few round 3 finishes in his career, a couple in the UFC. So, when he has lost, Miles Johns has been finished, won by submission by John Castaneda late in a fight, and then also won knockout by flying knee against Mario Batista. So he can be put out in a couple of ways. Raoni Barcelos, that knockout loss against Umar Nurmagomedov was the only time he's ever been put out by strikes. So, I don't want to read into that one too much. It is Umar Nurmagomedov who was a massive favorite over him. So, Barcelos did perform accordingly, and he lost the fight. But, man, I got to say, the only other thing that concerns me about Barcelos is sometimes he does not pivot from one part of his game to the next when he's losing, right? So if he's getting outstruck by Victor Henry, for a round or a round and a half, he did not really pivot to his wrestling until it was too late. You saw that in a couple of spots, even against Timur Valiev, kind of the same thing there. So, I do have my gripes, but overall the wrestling is in the favor of Barcelos. The jiu-jitsu, the striking weapons are very advanced in the favor of Barcelos. He's more powerful, more technical, so... and he's even faster, in my opinion. He's light on his feet. He moves in and out very well, even at 36, whereas Miles Johns is a little bit more slow and plodding, looking for the power punches, and like I said, pretty low output. So give me Barcelos to win here. He is a -215 favorite. Miles Johns about +185. I think Barcelos gets this done. I think he gets it done by decision. I could even see like a round 2 knockout if he lands the perfect punch. But at this point, give me Barcelos decision. I still like the money line where it's at. We're getting a little bit of the short end of the stick because I saw Barcelos was like a -170 to -180. That would have been a more appropriate price, but even at -215, I think he's pretty safe to win this fight. Welterweight bout up next between Muslim Salikhov and Nicholas Dalby. It's a battle between two aged strikers at 170, and it should be a pretty competitive battle. All things considered, we've got two different ways to look at this matchup. Muslim Salikhov, at 39 years old, he's more of the powerful finisher of these two strikers, that wushu sanda kickboxing style, spinning attacks, heavy hands, and he does have some wrestling as well. He is Dagestani after all, but he does attack a single leg takedown, and he can control you on the mat or in the clinch when he's able to. Nicholas Dalby, 38 years old. He's the karate stance fighter. Great kicks, but also very good boxing with the hands. More of a point fighter out of these two. Very durable, very good cardio, and good output, as we've just seen. So they're both coming off of wins. Muslim Salikhov, at the end of last year, he defeated Andre Fiallo by round 3 knockout. It was basically, you know what happens to Andre Fiallo after round 1 or the 7.5 minute mark. He becomes a punching bag, just lumbering there, open to being hit. And that's exactly what Muslim Salikhov did. He was hitting him with spinning wheel kicks, high kicks, some punches, and eventually the ref saw enough and stopped the fight. It was a standing TKO stoppage. So that marked the 13th knockout for Muslim Salikhov out of his 19 wins. He's only been knocked out one time, and that was middle of last year against Li Jingliang. So we are seeing that durability get cracked maybe a little bit for Muslim Salikhov, who at 39 years old, he does look like he is aging at this point. A little bit slow, a little bit plodding, and just looks a little bit like he's got those fight miles showing these days. Nicholas Dalby, the karate stance fighter, a point fighter through and through. He's had, I think, 10 UFC fights now, and out of his wins in the organization, they are all by decision. He does have 6 knockouts and 4 subs. None of those were in the UFC. They were in Cage Warriors and other regional promotions outside of the UFC. So all of Nicholas Dalby's wins have been point-based, minute-winning decisions. The weakness for Nicholas Dalby, he has been held against the cage in the past. Guys like Tim Means able to bully him in the clinch. Guys like, even guys recently that he beat, like Claudio Silva, able to control him in the grappling early, and Warley Alves, the same thing. But once those guys wear out, Nicholas Dalby is able to pivot off of the cage clinch. He's able to get back out to range, and he's able to either employ dominant grappling of his own or just score points with his boxing and his kicks. So, we're looking at the speed, the volume striking, the cardio of Nicholas Dalby, and his durability. We're looking at Muslim Salikhov, his striking power, the wrestling and the clinch work. I got to go with Nicholas Dalby on this one, mostly because the money line is helping me choose this pick. I think this is a completely 50-50 fight with two aged guys, and we'll see which one, is it going to be the power of Salikhov or the volume and cardio of Nicholas Dalby? But you've got minus 180 for Salikhov, the older man, and you've got plus 155 for Nicholas Dalby, the guy who looks a little bit more spry, with some pep in his step and some maybe a couple more bouts in the UFC, in my opinion. So give me the underdog here. I think there's quite a bit of value on that line. I took 1 unit on Nicholas Dalby at plus 157 on the money line. Again, I just think he gets the job done by being durable and, pouring on the volume in rounds 2 and rounds 3 for the W. Lightweight bout up next between two powerful strikers in Manuel Torres and Nicholas Motta. You've got more of the aggressive, fast-starting type of strategy from Manuel Torres, who throws 100% to all of his strikes and wants to finish that fight early in round 1, the way his past 8 straight fights have all finished in round 1. Take that against Nicholas Motta's game plan, which is a little bit more measured, technical, and low volume. More defensively sound as Nicholas Motta. He looks to find his openings, get some reads on his opponents, and then land the big left or right hook to put his opponent out cold. So it's going to be a battle of styles here, and right now we've got plus 160 on Nicholas Motta, who's currently 1-1 in the UFC, against the minus 185 favorite in Manuel Torres, who's got more of a well-rounded way of finishing fights. Like I said, 6 knockouts, 6 submissions, 13-2 overall. But again, Manuel Torres, I don't see him, having that much value being minus 185 when I haven't seen him outside of round 1, aside from one fight. So that does always bother me, especially when him moving forward leaves so many openings that I could see Nicholas Motta exposing. We just saw Nicholas Motta land a nasty round 1 knockout over Cameron Van Camp after touching his chin with that left hook like 8 or 9 times before the knockout blow came. Not the best level of opponent in Cameron Van Camp, but at least it got him on the winning track last September. Before that, in his debut, Nicholas Motta did get chin checked himself by Jim Miller in early round 2 of their fight. So Motta is probably the less durable as far as on paper. He has been knocked out 3 times and submitted once. So 100% finish rate in all of his losses. And he's got 9 knockouts out of his 13 wins. So he's been proven a little bit more to go the distance. He is very low volume, And if you could stick and move on him and be safe and just out of range of his power, you could easily outpace him on the feet. So I'm going to take Manuel Torres to do just that. He's 28 years old, still probably improving. His last fight was his only UFC fight, and that was against Frank Camacho in his debut, scoring a nice right to left hook knockout in round 1. I think he does something like that again. I'd say Manuel Torres probably gets like either a knockout or a club and sub under 1.5 rounds, the way he's been winning his fights. 15 professional fights for Manuel Torres, 14 have ended inside the distance, including his 2 submission losses. So I don't see Motta locking up a submission for the first time in this bout. And I think Manuel Torres will find the chin of Motta at some point, but there's a serious possibility he gets knocked out himself, leaving his chin up in the air, throwing wild bombs against Motta. I would rather play, if you're going to play something on this fight, the under 1.5 around minus 120, or the under 2.5 whenever that drops on a sports book like either DraftKings or Bovada. They probably will have something nice on the under 2.5 that could even be a parlay piece on this card. So give me Torres by knockout or club and sub under 1.5 rounds. Featherweight bout up next in a clash of styles between the wrestler and grappler Pat Sabatini taking on Lucas Almeida, the Brazilian athletic kickboxer, with a 100% finish rate, 14 wins and 1 loss for Lucas Almeida. He's got 14 wins all by stoppage, 9 knockouts and 5 submissions. The only decision that he lost, his only loss that he has on his record, is against Daniel Zellhuber on the Contender Series about a year ago. So Lucas Almeida came in last year against Mike Trizano as an underdog and got that knockout win in round 3 after dropping Mike Trizano a couple of times and getting dropped himself in round 1, having to rally back, recover, and show some toughness and heart. So it was a good display in his debut. Now 1-0 in the UFC, and he's tried to fight a few times. He's tried to fight Zubaira Tukhugov. It fell through because of Tukhugov. Tried to fight Andre Fili, and he tried to fight Hakeem Dawodu. I think all of those guys pulled out due to one reason or another. So he's been trying to fight. He's been ready to go, and now finally he's got a dance partner in Pat Sabatini. And Sabatini, 4-1 in the UFC. Looking back, it's not the best level of competition, but he is a very talented wrestler, very strong, and his jiu-jitsu is on another level as well. So both of these guys, I really do think that Sabatini's striking is very, very basic. His durability is not that good. He's coming off of that knockout loss against Damon Jackson 1 minute in. And we've seen him drop before against guys like Jamal Emmers. Even Tucker Lutz was having some success in the striking in those small moments that he was not getting out-wrestled. So I've just got a hunch on this one that Lucas Almeida, if he can keep this on the feet at any point, rounds 1, 2, or 3, he's live for a knockout. You know, most likely earlier than later, but still, his cardio looks to be on point. If he needs to survive in round 1, Sabatini slows down even a bit more, has trouble getting that takedown in round 2. I could see a big knee from Almeida. I could see a nice left hook slipping and ripping and finding the chin of Pat Sabatini. I could see a high kick. I mean, I could see any number of strikes wobbling Sabatini and getting him out of there by knockout. So just a hunch on this one. I'm going to take the dog in Lucas Almeida. Now, either man, I think, has decent enough cardio, but I think it has to stay in their wheelhouse. Like, if Sabatini was forced to strike, for some reason couldn't land the takedown, I think his cardio would wear out faster than Almeida's. But if Almeida is ragdolled around from pillar to post, I think he will eventually break and stop getting back up and eventually maybe get submitted here. So, Lucas Almeida, I think his best path is by knockout. Plus 160 on the money line of Almeida. Minus 185 for Pat Sabatini. I can see the logic in picking Sabatini. I'm a big fan of his, but it's just a weird hunch I've got that Almeida is something special here. I think he does get that knockout and get a 15th win inside the distance. And I'm going to take him at plus 160 as a dog and probably play... I played 0.75 units on his money line. I'm probably going to play another quarter unit on his knockout prop, which I'm seeing around plus 265, plus 270. So that's the way I want to attack this, since I think that's the most likely outcome for Almeida to win. Why not put some investment on that prop and then the rest on the money line in case it does go to decision for the first time for Almeida. So that's the way I'm looking for this. Give me a round 1 knockout for Almeida. Middleweight bout between two strikers. We've got Christian Leroy Duncan versus Armen Petrosyan. Super fun matchup between two dangerous finishers. The Armenian kickboxer Armen Petrosyan, who is 2-1 in the UFC, coming off of a pretty dominant decision win over a newcomer in AJ Dobson. And Christian Leroy Duncan, an 8-0 undefeated professional. pretty much a human highlight reel as far as the Cage Warriors division is concerned. He's the former champion overseas, and he made his debut back in March in the UFC. Pretty anticlimactic victory over Dushko Todorovic, who injured his knee in round 1 in the clinch. So this is really going to feel like the true debut for Christian Leroy Duncan to see what he's all about at the UFC level. But he's a knockout artist through and through. He's very accurate and powerful out of both stances. He makes those in-fight reads. He's super athletic. He can find holes in his opponent's defenses very quickly and expose those. And since people always want to take him down because he's such a great striker, he's developed a very good anti-wrestling and scramble ability over the course of his career. He does boast also a 17-6 amateur record from 2015 to 2019, where he had 6 losses. So he learned those lessons early, and he's got, I think, like 6 or 7 submissions on that amateur record as well. Only 1 submission win out of his 8 wins as a pro, but he did take his opponent down, get the back, and get the rear naked choke. So he does have a well-rounded game. Now, he's not just a striker and one-dimensional, but I would consider Armen Petrosyan to be just that. He is a little bit one-dimensional with his striking. His weapons are pretty basic. Some nice kicks, some nice, just simple boxing combinations. But, he can get taken down pretty easily, but he does pop back up to his feet. But you're not going to see him really employing or going for the offensive grappling himself. He wants to keep this on the feet at striking range. But I just think his weapons are way more basic. I don't think he's as durable. I've seen him get put out pretty badly by knockout before. And, Christian Leroy Duncan, his cardio has, yet to be proven because he does finish his fights so quickly. But he's low volume enough where I think he's not going to wear himself out. He's got pretty decent cardio for being a guy who can be held down, held against the cage, have to work his way back up, and he still has that crisp kind of pop in his punches in round 2 and round 3 I've seen. So his cardio looks pretty good. He's 27 years old. The younger man, the bigger man, huge reach advantage in this bout, and I just think he's got a more diverse way to win the fight. He could really even take Petrosyan down and control, a well-rounded mixed martial arts game in this fight if he wants to. So the money line has come down in the favor of the side that I'm on. I think Christian Leroy Duncan gets like a round 1, late round 1, or early round 2 knockout here. But I'll just take his money line for now, minus 145. I will play that for a couple of units. So give me Christian Leroy Duncan to get this job done inside the distance by knockout. And in the co-main event of the Fight Night card, we've got a lightweight bout between Armen Tsarukyan and Joaquim Silva. It's a pretty mismatched fight here because, Tsarukyan has been supposed to take on Renato Moicano for some time. That bout is just not going to materialize, so they're keeping Tsarukyan on the card, keeping him active, and giving him somebody who's not even in, like, the middle part of the division. Like, Joaquim Silva is at the lower end of the lightweight division, and Tsarukyan is a guy who's in the top 10 at this point. So big step in the wrong direction here, but the money line reflects that. Minus 1,000 for Armen Tsarukyan, plus 700 for Joaquim Silva. So by far and away the biggest favorite on the card, and for good reason. Only 26 years old for Tsarukyan. This guy is super well-rounded, but a very strong wrestling game plan. Very good cardio to match not only a 3-round pace, but a 5-round pace as we've seen. And he's got power in his strikes. 8 UFC fights, he's gone 6-2. He could even be 7-1. I would personally give him that 5-round decision against Mateusz Gamrot last year. But that is one of his losses, and his other loss was against the current champion, Islam Makhachev. A fight where, when he was very young and new to the division, he took Islam Makhachev to a fairly competitive decision over 3 rounds. So 19-3 as a professional. Joaquim Silva's got a decent record as well. He's 12-3, but he's been very inactive. He's a switch stance striker, good Muay Thai fighter. He's got power in his strikes. And to be honest, Armen Tsarukyan hasn't really fought a lot of power threats, just solely power Muay Thai strikers, but Mateusz Gamrot does have power. Damir Zhumagulov, who he just beat by a dominant wrestling performance over 3 rounds, he certainly has power. Matt Furvola, who he beat by decision a few years ago, that guy has power as well. But these guys are also grapplers for the most part. And all of the rest of Tsarukyan's opponents he's beaten have been grapplers as well. Talking about Joel Alvarez, OAM, who else? Christos Yagos, who he knocked out, and even Islam Makhachev, who he had lost to, like I mentioned, all grapplers. So he's fighting a lot of high-level guys who have not only, good grappling, but power in their hands as well. Whereas Joaquim Silva just represents one of those things, right? Mostly just a knockout artist who has durability issues at this point. He got knocked out very quickly a couple years ago by Ricky Glenn, like 37 seconds into round 1. He got sparked, and he also got hit by a big overhand from Nasrat Haqparast, under 1.5 rounds as well. So, not a great wrestler is Joaquim Silva, very inactive. Most of his wins are no longer on the UFC roster, and I really do think he only has that knockout Hail Mary chance to win this fight. Otherwise, he's going to get out-wrestled. He could get sparked in the feet, and he could basically just get taken down and ground and pounded out to a TKO stoppage. And that's really how I think this plays out. So to chop down that minus 1,000 money line, I am tempted to play that Arman Tsarukyan by knockout, just assuming it would be either something on the feet or a ground and pound stoppage. It's minus 125 for Arman by knockout, so maybe play a unit or so on that, just as a way to get some Arman Tsarukyan action, take advantage of this mismatch of a fight, and still try to find some value on that line. So give me Arman Tsarukyan. I'll say under 1.5 round knockout for him. Okay, we've made it all the way to the main event of the Fight Night card. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and let's break into this potential 5-round middleweight bout between former title challengers Marvin Vettori and Jared Cannonier. Both guys have challenged Israel Adesanya unsuccessfully for the title. Both lost via 5-round decision. And both guys have also lost decisions to Robert Whittaker as well. So those are the two men that both guys share as their, the guy that they just can't beat at this point. So we'll see who can make a statement on Saturday night and, maybe challenge one of those two men for a rematch. But right now we've got Marvin Vettori as the slight favorite. He's like a minus 120 favorite, about plus 105 for Jared Cannonier, the slight underdog. Money has been trading back and forth. It's pretty much a 50-50 fight as far as the implied odds and the sports books are concerned. And I totally agree with that because I think this fight is incredibly close and competitive. I think it does go 5 rounds. I'll just get that out of the way right now. Marvin Vettori, not much of a finisher, and he is very durable in return. So I don't see Jared Cannonier putting him out, and I don't see Marvin putting out Jared Cannonier by strikes. So I think this is going to play very close. I think Jared Cannonier is going to be striking as the aggressor, moving forward and stalking the whole time, landing the bigger, more effective strikes. And I think Marvin Vettori is going to be on his back foot, counter-striking, probably with more output and more busy work with the leg kicks, strikes to the body, and then countering up top. But I think it could be one of those things where even though Marvin lands more technically on the numbers, the big eye-catching shots, the audible shots in the quiet Apex arena, that will all be in the favor of Jared Cannonier, just to be the aggressor. So optically, audibly, and maybe even on the white Caucasian face of Marvin Vettori, he might wear some of that damage visibly more. His face gets all red when he gets hit. He gets those lacerations pretty easily. All that goes in the scoring criteria. So this could be very, very close. It could be the effective strikes versus the number of strikes for Vettori. I don't want to be caught on that game betting a money line price on either side, if I'm being honest. I like the overs more than I like a side here. I like the over 4.5 at minus 150. The fight goes to decision at minus 135. Or if you really want to get cheeky with it, I think Vettori wins this fight. And plus 150 for Marvin Vettori by decision. Still, even that is not enticing enough for me to want to back him in this spot. But I think Vettori wins. He is 10 years younger at 29 years old. He certainly has more of an ability to keep on getting better at that age and make improvements. He's got more of a ceiling and way more fights in his career left ahead of him. Whereas Jared Cannonier, 39 years old, he's been at heavyweight before, been at light heavyweight before, and he's now doing the best work at middleweight, where he's gone 6-2 in his 8 middleweight fights. Like I said, the only 2 losses to Adesanya and Robert Whittaker. He's got incredibly clean striking, and his volume actually looked really good last time out. Even though he's 39 years old, Cannonier does not look like he's regressing that much. He just beat Sean Strickland in a pretty close, but I thought he won the fight last time, to be honest, at the end of last year in December, landing the bigger strikes, stalking down Strickland, and just putting more oomph into his punches, and it just looked better optically, and his output, I think, was actually higher in the later parts of the fight, which is usually a trait of Marvin Vettori. So both guys decent cardio. For as powerful and explosive as Cannonier is, he was able to pace himself over 5 rounds. He could do that again here. So, close fight. You probably want to be on the side of the underdog if you were playing a side here. But the guy who can mix it up with the wrestling, if he chose to do so, is Marvin Vettori. He could cage stall. He could maybe even land those takedowns. After landing a combo on the face of Cannonier, maybe he could level change and get the takedown. That's always in his back pocket. So, yeah, I'm going to take Marvin Vettori to win the fight, but not a lot of confidence in that pick. I'm not playing that money line. If anything on this fight, I will play the overs. Like I said, that over 4.5 is enticing. Maybe whatever the over 3.5 is could be something you could play as well. But that's the way I'm going with it. Give me Vettori by decision. Not a lot of confidence on the side, but I do like this fight to go the distance. Okay, there you have it, you guys. All the fights broken down for UFC Vegas 75. Vettori versus Cannonier at the Apex 14-fight card. Should be a lot of fun. And again, join me on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time this week for my live stream with Aaron the Dog MMA as we trade back and forth opinions, ideas on how to make money on this card, and just have a good old time talking mixed martial arts. So hit the like, hit the subscribe, and I will talk to you guys very soon. Cheers.